Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're calling from. I didn't see a meeting from, or a message from Christian. Usually he has like 60 or 70 people joining from Norway. So Norway has a huge amount of interest in PowerApps and Power BI, and he brings all these people in. Sandy, I thought you were from Germany, not Croatia. So I don't know where I got my wires crossed, or you're just visiting, or you're doing a job out there. I would also love to get acknowledgement that somebody can hear us. So we're going to pause for a second. Maybe have to do a restart, turn on a different microphone, but I want to make sure that you guys can hear us before we move on. So if someone could go out and acknowledge us, because remember, they're about 5 seconds behind, so they're listening to it. And I've got Karthik in the room with me, and he is pretty excited to go out and talk to you about how you can actually go out and, Kaimet, thank you, Richard, David and Jefferson, hello from Brazil. So we've got lots of people that can hear us. That is great news. A lot of excitement in how he's going to actually enable you guys to go out and do your development in real time while your customers are actually using the exact same application. So he's going to walk through that, and I'm actually pretty excited about looking at it.
Cool.
And before you get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Chuck. So I'm Karthik Bharathy, PM on the PowerApps product group. Primarily, I look at the authoring experience in the PowerApps Studio. I'm all about making PowerApps Studio the best tool to create cross-platform apps, look at the simplification, bring the whole set of new functionality, how you add new controls and write up a new app. Today, I'm super excited to talk about Save and Publish as a way to manage your app lifecycle and how you're going to manage your versions as you move apps from your test to all the way to production.
Very cool.
There's a parallel feature on environments that my colleague James presented earlier. So this is more of scope to, let's say you're a small organization where you're not managing a lot of environments, or you're just doing it in one environment with more authors and you quickly want to share. Save and Publish is the way to go, and we look at the details in this meeting.
Perfect. And I just saw that we've got somebody from Nepal. I think this is our first Nepal caller. So Dharma, welcome aboard. Anyways, so you've got a presentation here, or is this a Power App? What are we looking at?
Well, actually,
a Power App.
Yeah, it is. And I keep creating these apps, and I hate to switch tools. And given that it's more interactive, I decided to build an app, just kind of a walkthrough of what you're going to discuss. So let's get started. So primarily, we'll be talking about Save and Publish. For those of you who've not tried it out, this is a good time to just download the latest studio or fire up a browser, go to powerapps.com, create your first app, and then maybe we can do a live interactive, and you can shoot your questions as we go along. So the first thing, right? Anybody who uses the studio would just create their first version of their app, and that's what we're going to do. So let me switch windows, and I have the latest version of Power App, which is the 650 version, downloaded from the Windows Store. I believe we're releasing another update this week. And what I have,
and even though there's feature parity now between the web and the studio, you probably still want to use the studio just for the editing experience as far as dragging and dropping. Is there any other big changes why you would actually use one or the other?
Well, at this point, they are at feature parity. In fact, what we are doing is we're improving the reliability of the browser experiences. So occasionally you might see this nagging pop-up that says, hey, your session is crashed and it's not available. That's more a reliability issue that's getting fixed soon.
Okay.
So you may want to do a Control-S frequently in the browser, but apart from that, I think functionality-wise, both are at parity.
I find that the dragging and the bumping of the buttons is the granularity isn't quite as good. So I use the studio myself. Okay.
So let me go to my Open Hub, and what I did was I created this Power Bot. So it's actually a app that talks to a Q&A maker service, and then it essentially brings out the elements of the app that we'll talk about. So what I have here is a quick app. What I'm going to do is just create a copy of it. Imagine that I have created this app from scratch. So let me rename this as the PowerBot webinar, right? So I'm just creating a copy of the app. So that helps in making sure we're starting off with a clean slate in terms of the versions and the content and so on, right? Okay. So the first thing that you see once you've created the app and saved it is it lets you know from a save tab, which is a new addition, on what the version is. In this case, it says that, hey, just this morning at 10 a.m., you have created a new app, right? And there's also the option to share the app or see the versions. I'm interested in seeing the version on where I am. So clicking on it would bring up the web.powerapps.com. I can go into my version tab, and you can see that there is just one version, which is the one that I created right now. So it calls out a couple of things. One, the version number, which is actually a date time field at the moment. Who modified it, and under what version was it built under, and what's the state of the app, so which is live. And this is exactly what I'm going to see as an app author, and anyone else I share with as a user is also going to see.
And how do you mark the comments, and what would you recommend for that?
Yeah, so the comments field is a placeholder at the moment, so that's intended to write down notes on, hey, what is part of the app. So imagine you rev the app 50 times, and at some point you want to know which version has what. And so we will be enabling a way to edit comments pretty soon.
Okay.
Okay, so now that we have this version, let's also go ahead and run the app just to make sure it's all working, and let's also look at the functionality before we tweak it. So I'm just launching Play, and this brings up my player. I have my app, so it's a chat bot. So I'm going to say, hey, what is PowerApps, and then click on Submit. This is going to just do a bot query, and the bot is responding back on what PowerApps is. I can do a lot of these. What is a label, for example, as a control, right? You could say, hey, that's the control to use, blah blah. So it's fairly interactive. Great, the app is working. And for those of you who are interested in building this app, there's a separate blog post on the PowerApps.com site that you can refer to. So that's great. So let's go back. So from publishing your first version, we are saying that the app is available only to the app author, right? It's not shared to anyone. It's live. It's available only to you. That's great, but it's not where we want to be, right? So what's next? What you can do is you can share the app, right? And sharing, it's the functionality that we have. You can share with other authors and make them contributors, and doing so will enable them to see intermediate versions, the so-called drafts, as we progress along. And if you're sharing it with someone with user role, they will only see the published versions of the app. And the way you would distinguish between the two is by looking at the versions tab and seeing what's live. So only the live versions would be seen by users, and everything else would be seen by app authors. Great. So I'm not showing share at the moment, but it's as easy as just going to the share tab, typing in a name here, let's. So and then you can give can use or can edit permissions, saving. This is fairly straightforward. There are no changes here, right? Cool. So let's go back, and we have share working for our application. Now, let's go ahead and make some changes to the app, which makes it more interesting, right? So I'm going to switch windows and go back to my authoring environment. I have my app. And imagine you had a requirement to say, hey, you know what, change the color of this app, right? It's blue is great, but you know what, like depending on your theme or your company color policies, you might want to change it to a different color. I'm going to quickly choose a different color, like green. Not exactly my favorite, but
just... We got Seahawks colors going on.
That's true. So let's use green, and hopefully I can change all of this pretty quickly. And we have a text box. Just change the border to green as well. I have a separator. Notice that the Screen Explorer is in, so I'm just going to click on that separator and just do that. And I have a decent version of my green app. The blue color right here is my bot logo. I don't know if it makes. Let's try this one. Okay, not bad. Right. So now I have a variation of my app, and I can do one of two things. I can hit Control S, which is what I'll do now. So once I hit Control S, so this is going to save a draft of the app, right? This is not my published version. So right now, if I go to my file menu, you can see the same thing. Under save, you should see that, hey, at 10:10, which is right about now, there was another version of the app that was created. Just to drive home the point, let me also make another innocent change. And if I go back to the file menu, just like Control S, I have the option to save, saying that, hey, looks like your app has changed from where it was earlier. Do you want to save it? Click yes. This is the same option as the Control S. And then hopefully you'll get a new version of the app. Yeah, it's like 10:11, right? Now, let's go back to our portal view.
So I have a question for
Sure.
you, and I have a question for the 83 people watching.
Sure.
So if we go back to the editor experience, and don't hit it, but if you hit play, guys, so Carcass, Saikon, Mohammed, Vishal, Sandy, Ed Dorn, and Ed Dorn, I'll get to your question, and Joel. If he hits play here, what do you guys expect that you're going to see? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So are you going to see blue? Are you going to see green? Are you going to see blue and green with spaces or no spaces? So we're going to give them a second, and we're going to actually, maybe you want to talk about something else while we're waiting for them. I want to see if they actually can answer while we're waiting for them.
Yeah. And it is, in terms of the color, it is interesting. And while I did click a bunch of controls and saying, hey, click the control, go back to my formula bar, or go back to my fill menu, one of the cool features we will be releasing this week is around an options panel. Mm-hmm. So you no longer have to go elsewhere in the tab, and all of the options relevant to the control will light up nicely in the right-hand pane.
Nice.
So you can just click. There's a pretty cool color picker that's coming as well.
Yep.
So it's not restricted to the whatever 40 odd colors that we have. It's the color picker that you're used to, with that radial, the whole color spectrum with the alpha value, all of the fancy stuff. No longer you need to remember any of these RGBA values. Those will be filled for you.
I see that nobody's guessed. So why don't we go ahead and show them by hitting play, because I know what the answer is. Oh, wait. So Sandy assumes green. Okay, so Sandy hasn't run into this before. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you, Sandy, for guessing, by the way. Go ahead and hit play and see what we see.
So this version is, Sandy is right. So this is going to be a green version of the app because I, as an app author, modified it to be green. And when I preview it, I see my green version of the app.
Okay.
Right. That's cool.
So why it keeps catching me out, because it makes sense, and I'm actually answering Ed Dorn's question, is because I actually do all my PowerApp stuff inside of Power BI dashboards. So I'm looking at production running instances from a different identity.
Totally.
So I actually see the blue versions because of my quote, my dev environment is Power BI.
Exactly. That makes sense. In fact, let's actually try that out, right? So while we have the green version, so I'm just going to quickly bring up my phone with the PowerApps installed in it. So let me probably would need.
So Sandy and John, you guys were right, and I expected blue because of how I do my dev work. Interesting. Okay. So what Karthik's doing now is he's actually got his phone in his hand. We didn't turn on the camera, and he's actually scrolling to the application. He's loading the application. I assume that you actually have a mobile client?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to cast my phone to my desktop, so hopefully users should be able to see it.
Okay.
Yep. There you go. Okay.
Perfect.
So I have also installed the latest client from the App Store. So let me go ahead and launch my PowerApps mobile client. And you should see the same application light up. So in this case, I created a version of the app. So let me go to my apps, which is where I would see all of my apps. And PowerBot was the one I created earlier, but in this case, I created I created a new app, which was, I believe it was like PowerBot Webinar. That was the name I gave. Let me try that. Well, I guess I have to wait for the whole refresh to complete. There you go. That's the first app. So let me actually launch the PowerBot webinar. This is the one we created. And you're still seeing a blue version of the app. And this is what...
And this is what I see.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah. And this is a functional app, like, what is a gallery? Right. So, and then you should still see it functioning. Yeah. So then it shows what... And it's still like you're right. This was more of the blue app that we have. So let's keep this window on. So we'll revisit this and maybe exit the app. So we'll revisit this and see, hey, how we can get to the green version, right? That's so.
And Kevin, we're going to get to your question in a second. You keep going. We'll get, so circle back to Kevin in a bit.
Okay. So let me go back to my versions page. And earlier we just had one version. So let me refresh that page. And you should see 3 versions because I made 2 saves. There you go. You should see 3 versions. The one that's live is what you saw on my phone. The version number 2 was, I believe that's when we changed it to green. And the 3rd version was where I believe I just modified like the title text, but added some spaces and whatnot. And the 3rd version is what the authors are seeing at this point, and the 1st version is what the users are seeing at this point. Now, if I'm comfortable saying that, hey, you know what, I think I have the right changes, and then you can go ahead and publish the app, right? Now, publishing the app has 2 options. You can do it from the portal. If you're already on the versions page and you're comfortable, you can just click on publish. Else, if you're on the authoring environment, you can go to save, and the save page now, instead of a save button, would show the publish button saying that, hey, you have all your versions saved. Now, do you want to publish the app? Let me go ahead and do that. When I do that, it gives me a little pop-up saying, hey, this is how your app is going to look like. Here's your icon, the text, but I don't have a description. Doesn't sound that great, so maybe I'll just go to edit details. It takes me to my app settings page, and let me add some text here. Let me go back. I would have to save this change. And now I can publish the app, which looks better than what it was. So let's go ahead and publish this version. Publishing takes like a second or 2. It's fairly quick. Now, if I go ahead and refresh my app, you should see 4 versions, and the 4th version should be live, right? So this is more of now the live indicates what my users are going to see. Let's make sure that user, me again, I'm just going to switch to...
Can you bring the client back on your desktop?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me try and cast my device once again. Okay, I guess I need to just bring that up one more time. I just need to... Okay, there it is. So I'm connecting my phone back. And then, yeah, you should see my Power Apps at this point. Now, I still have the same screen, so let me go ahead and click on the Power App webinar. At this point, it's going to load the app. And okay, so this takes a while to refresh. So I believe I am connected. So I'll give it a few seconds.
While you're giving it seconds, maybe I answer Kevin's questions?
Sure.
Okay. So Kevin is asking, or actually further up, it scrolled off the top. Ed wants to know how come that we're displaying Power Apps content in the Power BI channel. And that's because I have access to it, and people ask me to stop using my personal account for both. So it's because of me, Ed, that you're actually getting Power BI. And I do, Power Apps in the Power BI channel. And obviously I do Power BI stuff as well. Now it gets to Kevin's question, which is, when is the integration for Power Apps and Power BI going to be available? There's a couple different ways of integrating those. There's at least 3. So you can go out and put a Power BI application in your dashboard, and you can do that now. So when can we do that, Karthik? Now is the answer.
Yep.
And then we're going to continue getting that better by being able to pass parameters back into the Power Apps from Power BI and actually pass that back in as filters. So that's actually how we're going to advance the dashboard integration.
Yes.
Additionally, in the video that I did for Microsoft Data Insight Summit, you'll actually see that there is a new control that's coming out. I think it's this week. I think it's actually just hit prod if I saw that.
Yeah, it's coming out soon. Like we have a control where you can refer to Power BI.
So in your Power App, you go out and actually decide what visuals from Power BI you're going to display.
Yep.
And that should be coming out this week, next week. It's soon. It's done.
It's done. Internally, we can see it. It's a matter of pushing the bits out.
Yeah, it's just a matter of pushing it through the bits. Yep. And then finally, what Ankit showed at Microsoft Data Insight Summit, which is a ways out, the devs hasn't really started working on it in anger yet, is a custom visual inside of Power BI where you actually put your Power App in as a custom visual.
Yep.
So those are 3 ways. One's available now, one's available almost now, and one's available, let's call it fall Christmas.
Yeah, we don't have a date yet, but we are working to make sure that we roll that out to customers. That was a cool scenario where we leveraged a lot of runtime usage. So you don't have to pass parameters through URLs. Right. The moment you click on the Power BI report, it magically updates the app, and that's like live, right? So then Amir had a cool demo showcasing that.
That's right.
The summit.
So Sandy, thank you very much for the nice comments. She said she really liked it, and she also answered why she's in Croatia. She's a nomad,
cool.
So she gets all over the place.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we have a green version in prod, do we think?
Oh, yes. So let me actually show that in 2 ways. One is you can go back to your PowerApps webinar on your portal, and you can click on the play button. So that's just launching the web player. You see the green version. That's cool. And then it's functional. Of course, I'm not going to run it again, but it's in the green version. So let me close that. So you can also see that on your mobile phone. Let me see, my cast keeps going away, so I need to click on my machine every time to connect it back. So that's coming up right there. And let's click this app. And you should see the green version.
And we got a green version of the phone.
Cool.
Very cool. Now, of course, the next scenario is, and we do this at Microsoft all the time, we push out bits a little bit too early.
Right.
We pull the trigger, and I was on the Visual Studio, and we put all of the brand new logos in the new color.
Totally.
And marketing was mortified. Like, what the hell did you guys just do?
Yeah.
And we had to roll back.
Yes.
So how would we do a rollback?
Great question. So let's see how that can be done, right?
Is that where you're going to go next?
Yes.
Okay, good. I was like, oh my God.
You looked at my slides, but no, but that was a.
I was going to say, oh my God, I just ruined his presentation.
So no, yeah, like just to close on the point of update, contributors can see the updated versions of the app. Hey, there's another interesting point in this slide, which says that only one author can modify the app at any point in time. That's an important statement. Like, while we say that, hey, here's your app, you can modify it to your green versions or your purple versions, it's always one author at a time. And if there are multiple authors who try to edit the app, there's a little prompt that comes up saying, hey, it looks like someone else is editing the app. You'd have to wait until the other person is closed. Or if it happened to be yourself, like you're just opening one on a Windows client and another one on a browser, you have an option to override the session and saying, hey, do you really want to switch and just move to this client and edit the app? And so that's a useful way to make sure that, hey, people don't override each other's changes. Even though we are creating drafts, it's a good way.
I was going to ask about merge conflicts, and you just avoid those.
Yes.
Yeah, nice. Okay.
In fact, I might be able to quickly show that one before. So I do have this PowerApps bot webinar app open on my Windows client. Let me quickly launch that on my browser, and I should be able to show you what the experience is like.
Cool.
So right here, I'm going to say edit and web, and that's going to launch my PowerApps Studio on the web. It takes a few seconds, and you should see a prompt that says, hey, looks like you're already editing the app. Do you want to override your session? Oh, it didn't. So that was because probably my session expired on my client.
I think you did it. Yeah, you did a save, and we had actually waited
Oh,
a
yeah,
while.
that's true.
So when we saved, I think we actually left that
Okay.
that session.
Okay, let's come back to this. I'll
Okay.
make sure I will showcase that one. So that was update, and I think Charles asked a great question on restoring. We looked at this for publishing your app. Publishing makes it available to all users. Yes, we know that. And restoring is an interesting case. So let's see how that's done, right? And restoring is a primary activity from the web portal. So you need to go to your versions tab, and here we already have four versions of the app. So let's say we want to go back to the blue version of the app, right, which was our version 1, right? All you have to do is you have to click on restore, and you could restore any of the previous versions. Let's restore version 1. And here's the interesting point. So we're going to restore version 1 as a new version. So it's going to be restored as version 5. And the reason we do it is we don't want to overwrite any change in the stack, and it's easier to visualize saying, hey, you know what, this was restored as version 5, and hopefully soon we should be able to add a default comment saying, hey, this version was restored from version 1, so that's more of a auto comment, and you don't have to just take the pain of typing it, I guess. So let me go ahead and restore this app. Takes like a few seconds. It's fairly quick, and you should see line number 5 light up. And we always restore the app in draft state. So imagine that you restored an older version of the app, but you needed to change some of the things or modify a connection, change a flow configuration, whatever that is, right? We don't want to immediately make another version live to your users just because it happened to be in your previous version list. So that's what we've done. So now I have version 5, which is my version 1. Just for sanity purposes, I want to make sure I close this app. I don't want to have another app open while I'm just meddling with what's my live version. So I just close my app in my Windows Studio. Let me go back to the portal, and I have an option to publish the app. Clicking on publish brings up the same dialog. So this is going to give you an option to say, hey, do you want to modify your settings and whatnot? So you can choose to edit those. I'm going to skip them for now, and then you can click on publish this version. Now we have version 5 live. And the way to verify this is, let me close the other tabs. You can click on play now, and you should see the blue version of the app. There you go. It's the same functionality. It's all restored, and then you can always edit this, create your multiple iterations of this version. Cool.
And that makes sense. So I didn't quite understand how I was continuing to add more to my list.
Yeah.
But you just explained, and I understand it. Got it.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense now.
So yeah, it's always incremental. And should there be a case where, you know what, hey, I don't really need like version 2 and 3, these are like cosmetic changes, you can just go ahead and delete a version as well. And then that just removes it off that list.
Are those destructive deletes?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
But what we do in our backend is, while it's destructive from the user perspective, we do a soft delete.
Mm-hmm.
So anything you delete is maintained in our system for 30 days. And I mean, that's required if you happen to accidentally delete the public version of the app. And then you're like, hey, I don't have any version, and that was the version that I made live. So you can raise a support ticket, and we can restore your previous version of the app. So that's always an option.
Gotcha.
And if folks feel that, hey, that's a feature that should be a feature rather available to our PowerApps users, just do let us know through the forums.
You can resurface that as a piece of UI.
Yeah,
that makes
instead
sense.
of raising a support ticket, just let us know, and we can always prioritize that one. Cool. So now we have the 4 versions. We have restored them. Let me actually go back and yes, when you edit this app.
So we're in 2 instances of version 5 now. Is that what we're looking at?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you have version. Well, I deleted one version, so that's this version right now. So it was like modified a few minutes ago.
Gotcha. Okay. So we're now 2 instances are in the live version, which is now 4 because we've deleted something.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And now we're going to show the locking behavior.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Let's do that. So let me go ahead and close this app, just to bring up the locking functionality. Let me go here. Let me edit this app in my browser. I'm doing the converse of what I did earlier. I'm trying to edit the app first in the browser, and then I'll try loading it in the studio. Shouldn't make a difference really, but just making sure that we have enabled locking in both the scenarios. Just testing that out. Okay. So I have the same app. This is being edited in my browser. Let me go back to my Windows client and click on edit. Oh, you know what? I just clicked on edit on a different app. That's why. So, okay, now I get it. So this is the PowerBot webinar, but this was a PowerBot. So this is the original copy that I started with.
That's the one we did a file save as.
Yeah. So that's where, I mean, although the app looked the same, that's where I got confused. Okay. That's why it didn't work earlier as well.
You have to have approximately the same number of versions too.
Exactly. So let me go ahead and click edit on this app.
There you go.
That's the one usually.
All right.
So it should say that, hey, you already have the bot app logged in another session. You can choose to override, but you may not even get those changes in because you might not have saved.
Now, is that override option, is that because you are the one that has it in the other instance, or does it not matter? If it had been Sandy who had it in the other instance, could you overwrite her changes?
No, you cannot.
Okay.
So if it's, in this case, it's me, so I can choose to say, hey, let me override the session.
Got it.
But if it's Sandy, Sandy has to close her app or save and publish, and then you can get
So if
access.
Sandy goes to lunch,
yeah,
Karthik is screwed.
It depends on how fast Sandy eats.
Actually, how long, because your session time's out, how long is the session for an editor?
So we hold the lock for about 5 minutes at the moment, but we're planning to reduce it to 2 minutes. So in the cases where, for example, you just closed your browser tab or you closed your the Windows client, and you didn't actually close the app, and then, hey, you can't wait for 5 minutes before someone else opens it or you open it, right? So we sort of reduce the session timeout interval to 2 minutes.
To 2 minutes, okay. Good to know. I'm not seeing a lot of other questions. I think we've actually answered them all. Oh, Sandy says, so if you delete an incremental version because it was a minor or something else, PowerApps renumbers the versions beyond that. I guess at that point you would really like the version date. So let's actually look at those versions, because I think we're actually talking about ordinal values version versus version numbers.
Correct.
So version is actually the very first column.
Yeah.
And it's actually the PowerApps release is actually probably what you'd want to track and increment. Is that right?
So the couple of values at play, right? So really the first column version number is more of a auto-incremented number at this point, which it serves as a guidance, but it's not the true version. The true version is the datetime value. Like that's when you modified the app, what happened, and it's unique.
Oh, this is the runtime.
Exactly.
I see. Okay.
So the second column is when the app was modified. You also see the PowerApps release. That's an interesting field, right? So that's the version of the client the author used to create that version.
I see.
So now let me quickly talk about the use case where that's useful, right? So imagine in your company, you developed like, let's say, version 4 with 20650, right? And then that was like the golden app. You got it right, and then you shared it out with like all your users, and it's live. And then Microsoft begins to release its updates, right? You go from 650, 660, 70, 80, 90, whatnot, 700. Right? Now you're at version 700, and that's the one that Microsoft has shipped. What used to be the case was when any user opened the app in their 650, and these could be users who are on 650 client, these could be users on 700 client, Microsoft upgraded the app. So the app would be now compatible with only 700. And so you would be required to use a 700 client and then run the app. In some cases, Rare cases, in fact, if we introduced a breaking change between, let's say, 650 and 700, your app, which is in prod, may not actually work with your customers. That was a big problem, right? So what we did was we said, hey, if this app was created with 650, we would ensure that it's compatible with 650 and all the releases, whatever, 660, 670, and it would run with even 700, and Microsoft will not upgrade the app. The only time we would update the app is when the app author chose to edit this version and says, hey, you know what, I'm in the latest authoring environment of 700, and then automatically we say, okay, the author is on the latest client, let's upgrade the app. So we repackage.
Because he's proven or he's validated that it works.
Exactly. So now then we repackage the app, and then you should see a line entry. I mean, if the author saved, let's say it's version 5 next, then you should see version 5 with that date, and it would say 20700.
Got it. Okay, so Sandy's exactly right. Version number, take with a grain of salt because it's mutable.
Yep.
Modified is probably what you're going to want to track because that's immutable. That's always going to be the case for that instance of the app.
Totally.
Interesting. Okay. So I promised Karthik a beer for every 10 minutes he finishes early.
Yeah, I'm trying to earn as many beers as I can.
We're going to go ahead and open this up to questions, but were there anything else that you wanted to conclude or finish up with?
Yeah, I did have a couple of other scenarios that I wanted to talk about. If there are no questions, then I'm happy.
No, there's no other questions. It looks like we've been handling them in process or in situ.
Okay, cool. So what I want to talk about was a nuance, right? Let's say I have this app. Let me go ahead and it's called PowerApps Webinar. I have it right here. So I want to rename this app. Now there are multiple versions, and I've been shipping 4 or 5 of these versions, calling it the PowerBot Webinar. Now, my marketing team comes up and says, hey, you know what? It's not PowerBot Webinar. That's not how you give out products. It's probably like PowerBot, underscore or PowerBot. Give me a name. Like, what would be a cooler name?
Streamcast,
Okay.
Aircast, or Playcast. Sure. Cast has got a new life, lease on life.
Okay. So let's go with Streamcast, right? The way you would rename the app is you'd go to the details and you'll go to settings and notice this pencil icon. That's how you'd rename the app. And what it means is once you rename the app, you're actually renaming the app for all versions. It's not like, hey, it's called Streamcast now, and then you restore a version 1 of the app, and then suddenly the app is going to change its name. The name is going to be constant, and it's applicable to both the the live versions as well as the draft versions of the app.
And does this have implications beyond when you actually load and find the app? It doesn't actually change like the headers or the titles or anything else. It just is where I go out to search for the app or actually run the application.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Right. Only for searching. Yeah, and that's exactly the problem we want to avoid, right? Once you switch to a newer name, and then you decide to restore the app, we don't want users fumbling around saying, oh, I saw that app, but now it's gone, and then it's of a different name. You don't want to lose the app once you change the name, right? So you can click on it, and that's exactly the pop-up that comes out, says, hey, you're actually going to change the version for the published version. So you can click on Streamcast, change the app, and you would need to refresh the portal. Like I'm going to click on back as a way to refresh. If I go to my home page, you can see that, hey, it's now called Streamcast. It's the exact same app now. You can click on open. It would launch the PowerBot Streamcast. You can see that on the header. And that's the supported way to rename. And that's also a change from what it was earlier. I would have to refresh it on my client as well. Notice that it changed to Streamcast. If I edit my app in previous versions, okay, I have the session open. Let me click on override in this case. I'm not making any changes. So earlier versions of Studio had the option to rename the app from settings. You cannot do that right away, but we still have a functionality to say edit app name, which essentially takes you to the settings page. So the portal is the only way you can edit an app. And it makes sense because we want it to be a conscious decision. It's not like an ad hoc, some authors change the app name and hey, it's different, and other app authors are not aware. So it's all in one place. You go to the portal, and that's where you change it.
Perfect. Makes perfect sense.
That was one. And the other question I frequently hear is, hey, about versions. There are no limitations in the number of versions that you can have. In fact, we've seen customers who have like 100 versions of the app. In fact, they actually had 100 versions, and at some point we had a bug where we wouldn't show something beyond 100, which is fixed now, by the way. But that was like, hey, wow, like 100 versions of the app. Then yes, so there are no limitations as such. You can have as many versions as you want. Trying to see if there's something else that we should look at. Yeah, there's actually one more. There's another cool feature that's coming soon, which is autosave. Right? Although I did call out that, hey, every time you make a change, you want to publish a draft, you have to hit Control S. We want to move away from like a manual save all the time. So we will introduce a periodic save where periodically we would, just like Excel or PowerPoint, we would save a copy of the app. It does not mean that we would create a new version. It just means that, hey, we'll create a line item that says, hey, here's your auto-saved draft, right? And then that could happen. Let's say you had a session for an hour, but then we would save, let's say, every 5 minutes. So you would have like 12 auto-saved draft. We wouldn't create like suddenly 12 versions that, hey, like where did this come from? It would be a single entry for that session. And we would make sure that it's the same version number that you have to deal with. And once you hit a Control S, we would just take your Control S and then make sure just, hey, you're saying like, that is like the permanent draft, if you will, right, so to speak. And that's a single version. So autosave is coming soon, and then that hopefully should lessen the pain of some of these reliability issues as well, and also hitting Control S all the time.
And does that hydrate an MS apps file locally in addition to in the service, or would it be?
No, it doesn't. So that's a good question. So the autosave functionality will only autosave on the cloud.
Okay, right.
Once you save it locally, it's up to you. It's a copy of the app that you've created. We don't autosave those.
All right. So John Fitzpatrick was asking, where's the best place to provide feedback for MS, for PowerApps specifically? So since Karthik is sharing his desktop, I'm going to ask him to open up a brand new tab. Sure. And we're going to have him go to powerusers.microsoft.com. I believe that's the URL. I should know it because it's my team that builds it for you guys. But it's powerusers.microsoft.com.
I usually go to powerapps.com and click on support.
Yep. And this actually, you'll see why we've got like Flow and Power BI, because it's all the same team. We want to enable the business analysts. And you click on our favorite purple option, which is actually the Power Apps itself. And scrolling down a little bit, you actually see that there is a Power Apps ideas. It had like 2,300 ideas when I went fishing. So we're up to what now? Had another 100. Sorry, my math isn't very good. And if you click on that, I can go out and add a new idea, or hopefully, or more than likely, actually find the idea that you're already thinking of and add your vote to it.
Yeah.
Karthik is one of the feature PMs. He uses this all the time for prioritizing his work. So if he goes out and has 3 features he wants to do in the next semester, he's going to look here to see which one has the highest votes. And we do get to go out and see, are you guys going out and creating fake accounts and coming in from the same IP addresses? So, you can try and game the system, but these are data scientists. They're looking at the data. They're typically going to see through it. But in either case, this is John Fitzpatrick is the best place for you to give us feedback. Obviously, if you go back up a level and take a look at the forums, that's the best place for you to actually go out and get help. So on that topic, we just introduced this week a Power Apps MVP category.
Cool.
So if you have nominated somebody last week, we probably are going to lose them or put them in SharePoint or put them somewhere in the wrong place. And you could renominate them. I would be in your debt. Or if you know somebody that deserves a Power Apps MVP nomination, like maybe Sandy, go out and search for nominating Microsoft MVP, and you actually see there's a link, and it only asks you like 8 questions, and you can nominate somebody. And then people like me and Audrey Gordon will actually go out and vet your community contributions for the last, no, God, it's November now, so last 6 months.
Cool.
Wow, I can't believe you guys are going to release that long. So with that, anything else that you want to finish up with?
No, I think we covered most of it. Just from a purely, I guess I had these takeaways. I think we covered most of them. And yeah, there's no limit on the, yeah.
Okay, so John is actually asking about bug reports. I believe under PowerApps and Flow, there's issues for them. And if these are not time critical, I'm going to repeat that twice more just to make sure. If these are not time critical and not time critical, the forums are the right place to go ahead and present those. What kind of bugs am I talking about here? In the documentation, you've got a link that goes out to 404, or if you've got a font that's not Tahoma 8.4, or if you've got an OK button that's not in the lower right, it's in the lower left, let us know that way. If it is something that is time critical to you, go back into powerapps.microsoft.com and actually create a support ticket.
Yep.
I don't think they cost anything. If you are a registered user for PowerApps, it says create support ticket right there on his and Karthik's screen. And ask you a couple of questions, and exactly like presenting an idea, it's going to go out and do a search and see if you've already run in this idea. So time critical, go out and use the button that Karthik is showing. If it's non-critical, go out and use those forums that I showed you a second ago.
Yep.
So with that, guys, I want to thank Karthik for joining us and walking through some of the things that actually had confused me. And I haven't looked at it since phishing, so I needed to get back at it. Angie says hola. So Angie may be a little bit late to the game. She's just joining us now. And otherwise, she can actually look at the recording. And of course, people always ask, is there recording? There's already recording. You can go rewind right back to the beginning if you're just joining now, Angie, and see everything that you've seen. And of course, it's going to be available. Next Tuesday, we are back in this room with Audrey, who's actually going to show you some design best practices, I believe is actually what she's going to do. And we're going to get David Eisinger from the functions team to come back and actually do another session.
Cool.
That was just pretty cool. So Karthik, with that, I'm going to go ahead and close the session. I want to thank everybody for joining us.
Cool. Thank you, Charles.